What makes visual storytelling distinctly different from written is the ability to personify through the physical form of an object. Not purely the object itself, but how everything else in the shot, camera angle, lighting, coloring, can add dimension that books could only dream of. For example, when Evangelion Unit 3 attacks Shinji in Neon Genesis Evangelion episode 18, we see the Eva perform in a way we never thought imaginable. It disgustingly, almost artificially moves the robot around like a doll, with an elasticity like its arms are made from polymer. The absurdity in the way the angel moves coincides with the physical form of the organism. The 13th angel is goo. It isn't used to the movement of a bipedal creature. So when time comes to fight, the movement is presented as awkward, which only makes it creepier for the audience watching. Keeping in mind, the battle is taking place in the evening, being built up with Unit 3 being slightly hidden in a summer haze with the sun to its back, covering the creature in a shadow, making it appear even more ominous. Especially if you factor in the last minute where Unit 3 makes short work of Evangelion Units 0 and 2. In those moments, Unit 3 was presented as this mysterious yet dominating force cast in either low-angle shots or close-ups. This scene works in tandem with the accompanying eerie score in the background, but even without the audio, one could perfectly understand the intended presence of the 13th angel by visuals alone. The anime doesn't have to explain the dangers of an Eva through dialogue at this point, we already know, but what it now has to do is communicate how uncomfortable a rogue Eva can be. Here's an example in which the visuals explain the moods of the characters without being directly confronted through dialogue or monologue. While Kensuke laments about not being selected as the pilot of Evangelion Unit 3, Toji is set as the focus, with him gazing into the abyss seemingly lost in thought. Last episode we received multiple shots of him gloomily reflecting on his current situation after school, and this episode is equally as bad if not worse. Meaning Toji's mind is descending into a sort of melancholy, potentially because he is stuck in a terrible situation he is unable to change. Just after this, Asuka casually trots into the room getting angry over nothing, and turning what would be mundane banter into an awkward spat. The class is probably used to the interactions between Asuka and Toji, but this time they can tell something is different as shown when the camera cuts to their concerned reactions. We know at this point, Asuka is coming in after being further rejected by Kaji, as well as the full knowledge that Toji is the fourth child, which can only bring frustration to Asuka because she doesn't like Toji that much and probably thinks he isn't worthy to be an Eva pilot, which is why she looks directly at him when she seemingly yells at the entire group. While the scene isn't terribly deep, it goes to show that much can be read from even the finest details, like how many seconds a shot is on screen. As mentioned in a video I will link, one of Evangelion's biggest strengths is packing so much detail into every scene, especially when it comes to the expressions of the characters, for the characters in Eva are terrible at communicating their feelings. This translates into the other background aspects that I mentioned earlier. So let's go ahead and observe the events being portrayed and what else they can tell us besides the easily identifiable action. Going back to the fight between Unit 1 and Unit 3, we see the angel almost immediately strangle Unit 1, which in turn strangles Shinji and could potentially kill him. This in turn causes Gendo to start arguing with Shinji as to why he doesn't fight back. As this conversation becomes more tense, the camera reacts by zooming in on the characters' faces. Finally, there is a second pause of tension, after which Gendo angrily gives the order to activate the dummy plug system. And while Gendo is rightfully judged for this decision, not just by the viewer, but also the crew, the visuals communicate the reality of the situation. This is a decision that Gendo is coming to under an extreme amount of pressure. Of course, there's the obvious problem of the pilot's not following orders, and add to the fact that this pilot is Shinji, who is his son, and he will lose if he does not fight. One should acknowledge Shinji is currently the sole pilot able to fight at this point, which means if Shinji goes down, then humanity will go down with him. Finally, there is Gendo's secret plan that has been brewing for the past few episodes now that will be ruined if the battle is lost. Gendo has plenty of justifications to use the dummy plug system at this point. The dummy plug is shown to be a clinical device that lacks the sensitivities of a human. Beginning with the snapping of Eva Unit 3's neck, it then bashes its head in, rips off his chest plate and arm, and then proceeds to repeatedly slash away at its abdomen. Unit 1 is presented as a monster in the similar vein of its previous Berserk moments, with it seeming even bigger than usual. As well, the tearing of Unit 3's chest abdomen is largely hidden away, instead cutting to shots of blood in various forms, either in the river or on structures in the city, simultaneously cutting to shots of the Nerve crew gazing, flabbergasted at the Eva's brutality, communicating horror to the viewer without necessarily showing too much gore. The results of such actions inevitably leads to horror in Shinji, which is explored in the next episode. The goal in episode 19 is to present the fatigue due to the great amount of stress put onto Shinji over the course of the show. The first way this is done is by sending the audience back to the hospital, a recurring location in the show that is all about recovery. The hospital in Evangelion has always been portrayed as this faraway land that is to one degree serene and peaceful, but to another exonerably alien. And in this hospital, we find Toji in the midst of healing, where after a few days has this conversation with Hikari. Because this is the last time we see Toji, the show decides to give a final hint of a relationship as exhibited in the close-up shots of the characters talking. But it is in this conversation that Toji comes to a realization that the show reveals at the exact same time. It is conveyed in clarity that Toji's fate is one of tragedy, but at the same time there is still the hope of human connection and companionship. This is definitely not the case for Shinji and his father. The trauma thrown onto Shinji has been far too much for him to find any value in trying to understand Gendo. This disconnect is shown to us with the characters placed at a great distance or without giving eye contact to each other. Gendo is again displayed as a cold and calculating enigma, wrapped up in his warped ambitions, giving little credence to Shinji's feelings. After reaching the train station, Shinji and Misato are also feeling a disconnect. Whenever presented in the same shot, there is always a barrier between them, where the camera decides to show the characters by themselves at a far distance from the nerve taxi that brought them to the station, which resembles the distrust Misato and Shinji feel towards the organization they have spent so much time working for. The next few minutes is a slideshow of pure anxiety and panic, with an unplanned angel attack that has come much more quickly than anyone could have planned. And while Nerve has come back from behind in the past, never before have they been desperately scrambling around to find a solution in a scenario where the resources required aren't available, culminating in Asuka being completely demolished by the 14th Angel, where none of the contemporary weapons that have worked on the Angels in the past can even hope to begin penetrating its AT field. This functions to drill into Shinji's head, as will be explained by Kaji soon after, that if the Angel descends into terminal dogma, then not only will his friends, but all of humanity will die. Coincidentally, as this is happening, Rei begins her suicide mission in which she is shortly defeated, but it functions as a good case study as to the length people will go to accomplish their duty. It helps that Shinji believes Rei pilots out of a sense of dedication to humanity, and probably interprets her attempt as an act of heroism. For the first time in this series, Shinji is consistently shot as a protagonist underdog, fighting against impossible odds to save humanity, which is in reality who he is, but Shinji has never felt like it, and the show reflects his feelings. But now he feels like the last hope of humanity, and in reaction, the show changes the camera angles ever so slightly. Shinji's evolution is made apparent when he finally reaches his father in a scene that foils episode 1. Instead of Shinji piloting Unit 1 purely in the hopes of gaining his father's approval and preventing the potential death of a girl he doesn't know, this time he is fighting to save the few connections he has made over the course of the show, because he wants to. And the battle is presented to reflect this evolution, having Shinji fight like a mad dog with a sense of aggression we haven't seen from him before. But this isn't per se heroic. The coloring has gotten much darker and Shinji is now seemingly going insane with bloodlust, until this power is swiftly taken away from him and instead the sovereignty is handed over to Unit 1. In what can be considered one of the most iconic moments in Evangelion, Unit 1 going berserk in episode 19 is an event drenched in terror and savagery, with the fight illuminating Unit 1 from the belly, which literally coats the Eva in shadow. Because the viewer still doesn't have the full picture as to what exactly Unit 1 is, the event is not only terrifying, but mysterious. Unit 1 kills the 14th Angel in about 40 seconds, and in this time we see the Evangelion act in a way even more uncomfortable than last episode. The Eva is now acting like an ape, moving on all fours and is animalistically roaring, the camera seemingly having a hard time keeping up with the robot's unorthodox way of moving. And after all is said and done, we are left with the Eva screaming into the abyss with pearly white teeth after eating the angel and breaking free of its armor. Bearing in mind the realization that said armor was more accurately inhibitors, one thing is for certain: the status quo we have been so comfortable with is now swiftly coming to an end. Evangelion episodes 18 and 19 serves to cap off the third arc of the show and prepare us for the last 7 episodes, which will include their own moments that, while not as action-packed, are equally as dark. It is because of the expert direction in Neon Genesis that this transition can feel seamless. The last 3 episodes in particular focus on the interpersonal relationships and psychology of the characters. This time, the action itself is particularly grim. This rounds out the 3 main components of Eva, which means the transformation is complete. complete. What to look for now is how bleak can Evangelion get before even the audience falls into despair. But what about these episodes stuck out to you? If you thought there was anything I missed, let me know in the comments below. If you enjoy content like this, then leave a like and pledge to my Patreon to support my future endeavors. If you would like to keep up to date as to what I am doing, then follow me on Twitter. Be sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon. The next episode will be out within the next month, so look forward to that. Thank you for watching, and take care.